It's Wednesday, June 26, 2024, and I welcome you to the daily headline newspaper update on the Insider Podcast. I am Kayode Sonny, and today we have the Guardian newspaper, the Punch newspaper, Vanguard newspaper, The Nation, Business Day, and outside Nigeria we have the Daily Mirror. Starting off the day with the Guardian newspaper on page 6, the big story: poor states rack up debts, leave $335 billion minerals to illegal miners. And on page 30 of the Guardian, cholera, 10 million Almajiris, street kids at high risk. On page 5, Band A, court restrains Ikeja Electric NERC from applying new tariff. On page 4, Customs mourns as DC dies at National Assembly during Reps probe. On page 5, despite denials, Sokoto Assembly considers new bill against Sultan. Also on page 6 of the Guardian, minimum wage, private sector insists on 62,000 naira as Tinubu consults governors others. On page 29, Clark urges Tinubu to intervene in Rivers political logjam. Now on page 4 of the Guardian newspaper, graft concerns as EFCC shelves Akpabio, Adamu, Autumn others files. On page 5, federal government bans single-use plastics, styrofoam packs, and MDAs. And moving on to other newspaper, this one from the front page of the Punch newspaper today on page 2, minimum wage. Labour kicks as fake steps down memo, demands consultation with rider, failure to discuss memo giving room for speculation, NLC tells government. On page 27, CBN projects lower inflation, says reforms attract $24 billion inflow. On page 27 also, federal government meets local refiners over pricing, faults Dangote. On page 50, Senate didn't approve new presidential jet, says Akpabio. On page 12, court orders Emefiele to forfeit $1.4 million bribery proceeds. On page 59, Customs mourned as officer dies at Reps investigative hearing. And the last one right here, 5 killed as anti-tax protesters invade Kenyan parliament, and that's on page 25. Now moving on to the Vanguard newspaper today, on page 5, Tinubu to consult governors, OPS on minimum wage, says federal government. With rider says he can't take decision on new minimum wage alone, insists the input of governors LGA's OPS vital. Era of paying slave wage gone, says Labour. Any amount above 62,000 naira will create crisis, job loss, says NECA. Interesting. Other stories right here. We're seeing here Cardoso upbeat on taming inflation, supports measures to boost external reserves, and that's on page 19. On page 7, Chivido 2024, Lagos Island stands still as Davido Chioma exchange marital vows. On page 32, cholera, Tinubu directs Fed to set up committee to oversee emergency operations. On page 8, federal government moves to sell 3 aircraft in presidential fleet to buy 1. On page 9, no plan to dethrone Sultan, says Sokoto government. On page 9 also, insecurity, NSC alerts on terrorist recruitment plots using media platforms. On page 38 on the sports page, Liverpool battle Manchester United for Lookman. Also on the front page of the Vanguard newspaper today on page 12, Rivers crisis, Anti-Fubara protest rocks Port Harcourt. With rider wicket not ready for peace, Clark tells Tinubu. On page 19, DMO attributes rise in public debt to FX reforms, NPR hikes. And moving on to the Nation newspaper today on page 5, family, friends, associates converge on Ajimobi's residence for Fidao. And the big story on the Nation, minimum wage, Tinubu opts for more consultation. With rider, president to meet with governors, council chiefs, private sector players. And also, we have this one right here on page 4, EFCC tenders Emefiele's account statement. I want to travel abroad. Interesting. On page 37 of the Nation, Davido whips, gets 85 million naira SUV at show-stopping wedding. On page 32, Sokoto government, no plan to dethrone Sultan Abubakar. Economic indices remain positive, says Edun, and that's on page 4. Also, some other stories right on page 3. We're seeing customs officer drops dead during questioning by House of Reps panel. Okay, now to the Business Day newspaper. Today, the big story right here. Nigeria's gas export drops 25% on low output. Exits. Also, another story right here was saying, demand for federal government bond slows as investors seek higher yields. Okay, another story right here. What ShopRite exit means for Nova retail business in Nigeria. On page 30, the worst over for Naira volatility, says Cardoso. And this one right here, FEC steps down minimum wage memo as Tinubu plans wider consultations. All right, now outside the country right now, this one from the Daily Mirror. We're seeing England top group but failed to inspire in Slovenia draw. With the big ones, a slow progress. Okay, and another one exclusive. Emon, I'm not okay. This is not a good time. I hope Ruth and I can be friends. And to the big story on the front page of the Daily Mirror, Labour pledge on docks will end 8 a.m. GP scramble, with Ryder plans to tackle daily flight for appointments. Top medics warn Tory cuts have shattered NHS. And those are all the headlines from across the newspaper today. Thank you for tuning in, and if you have any reaction or comment, please kindly put them below at the question box and answer below this post. Once again, thank you for tuning in, and see you next time.